Yeah.
I don't know. He didn't tell me.
He's a youth rabbi there.
He's
Been for like a year. Yeah, you know.
His kids down here.
His
friend.
Someone's on.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, how you doing? I don't know if you can hear me.
Who's on?
This is our new Daf Yomi guy.
Aaron Weinstein?
No.
Aaron Black.
He's online. Yeah, he's on.
I don't know if you can hear us. But yeah. Okay. Guys, a big daf today. I mean, like kamus ve'echus, quantity and quality of the daf today is heavy.
Don't tell me hard.
Not hard. It's not got Gemara, but there's a lot of reading, and there's some really important Gemaras here that I think it's kedai to.
Let's go.
Okay. Do it. Come on.
All of a sudden, now we're up. Okay, so we're picking up from Daf Dalet on Beis. I don't remember exactly where we got to.
One of the verses.
Yeah, Kodim Deleka Milsa Katzam Torah. Like, okay, Reb Ami Kimot Lahikra. It's 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, we see it.
So 11 lines from the bottom. Yeah. Reb Ami Kimot Lahikra Bachi Yitin Ba'afer Pihu Ulai Yesh Tikva. This is talking by the Churban that you're going to have ashes in your mouth, and Ulai, maybe you'll have hope. Ulai, meaning I'm going to have all this terrible stuff happen to me, and that's not a guarantee that I'm going to succeed. Amar Kulei Hai Ulai, all this, and it's only maybe. That's something that he cried about. Rabbi Ami Kimota Lahikra Bach, he came to a different pasuk. Vikshu Tzedek, Bakshu Anava, Ulai Tisteru Beyoim Af Hashem. So again, another lashon of Ulai. You're going to have, you're going to want Tzidkus and Anava, and maybe Tisteru Beyoim Af Hashem. Hashem will protect you. Amar Kulei Hai Ulai, all of this, and only maybe. Rabbi Asi Kimota Lahikra Bach, he came to a different pasuk and he cried. Sinu Ra ve'ahavu Toiv, hate evil and love good. V'hitzigu b'shar mishpat, and it'll be presented in the gates of justice. Ulai yechanein Hashem Elokai tzvakos. Maybe Hashem will show you chen v'chesed. For Gemara, kulei hai v'ulai. So he cried. Rav Yosef kimot lahikra bachi. Yeah, this is a very interesting Gemara. Yeah. V'yesh nispe b'loi mishpat. There can be death, let's say, b'loi mishpat, even without judgment. Amar mi'ika da'alza b'loi zimna. Is it possible for a person to be taken from this world before his time? Gemara says yes. Ki had Rav Bibi bar Abaye havi shchiach gabei malach hamavis. Apparently he was hanging out with the malach hamavis. Amar leila shluchei, and the malach hamavis said to his secretary, Zil aisili Miriam megadla seyar. Miriam megadla seyar nashya. Unbelievable, yeah. He says, go bring me Miriam, who's the one who, let's say she's the hairdresser for the ladies.
Braider of hairs.
Azul Aisile Miriam Megadla Dardiki. And he went and brought her the wrong Miriam, meaning the Rishon speak out. He said, bring me Miriam Megadla something. Maybe crossed up messages. Don't ask me exactly how that message got crossed up. But somehow, instead of bringing him the Megadla Seyar, he brought him the Miriam, who was like the nursery teacher, basically. She raised children. Amrle, so he said to him, what are you doing bringing me this one? You brought me back the wrong lady here. Anna Miriam Megadla Seyar Nashya Amrilach. I told you to bring me the other one. Amrle, he says, what am I going to do? He says, I'll stick her back. Can you imagine the family sitting there? Like, goes flatline, all of a sudden, bam, she's back. Yeah.
Great movie line.
Yeah, no joke. Now let me put her back. Amrle, no. Hoyol ve'aisisu, since you already brought her here, we're gonna count her. So now the question here is not how did you do this? We'll get to that in a second. Meaning if she wasn't right for that time to die, how did you get her to be vulnerable to dying? Meaning apparently it's not so clear that you just pull someone out of this world if they don't have some. And we saw an idea like this when we were discussing the Gemara's in Tainus about a person could walk by a wall that's a little bit shaky and he could be taken early in this world. If he puts himself in a matzav of sakana, like just like there's many times the Mashiach could have come. It's a Zman that's right for it, but doesn't always mean he's coming. So too, it's possible for a person to have times in his life where maybe it's right for him to die and he survives. And then there are times when he can't be taken. So how are you able to even overcome that initial, preventative measure that Hashem put in the world to prevent her from dying? He says, "Havenikita misarach biyada." She was holding like a shovel of some type. Vahavis kashagra, and she was lighting up umachre and sweeping tanura, the oven. So she was holding this burning hot sort of kli of some type. Shakalta, she took it. Vanachta agaba de kara, and she put it down and it landed on her foot or something. And kadcha, she became nichvis, she became burned. And in that moment, she was like startled. The Isra Mazla, her mazel went down in that moment, clearly. And again, the sequence is a little funny. Normally we would say you have bad mazel,
You
and
can-
then the
you
thing
burn
falls
your
on your foot.
Right.
Here, it's almost as if the burning of the foot somehow caused the mazel to be bad. I see, and I was able to grab him. Meaning the boss was asking, like the president was asking the VP, how did you get it done? The VP said, I took care of it by, I don't know, I knocked over a shovel on her leg. Her mazel went bad, and then all of a sudden I was able to grab her. Amalei Rabibi Barabai. Rabibi Barabai is hearing this whole thing. He's sitting there, he's got his hands over his ears trying to figure out exactly how this is possible. Isluchu Rishusal Ma'avadachi. This whole business over here of taking this woman before her time, you have any right to do this? Amalei, what do you mean? Doesn't the pasuk say that we quoted earlier? Yesh nispeh, there is death below mishpat, without justice, meaning even without paskening on the case. Now, again, I just want to point out, when we think of this, we think, what's the problem with this? Like, what bothers you about this? What bothers you about this is I love this world. I want to live in this world. This world's a wonderful place. How did you take me so early? So, that would be the feeling that we have, the unfairness. That's not really what is bothered by a tzaddik. A tzaddik wouldn't be bothered by being taken from this world early. It's the fact that I can't live in this world to do mitzvahs, meaning the reason why I'm here is to get the schar in Shemayim. If you would say to a tzaddik 20 years before he dies, I'm going to snap my fingers and you're going to get all of the schar you would have gotten over the next 20 years, the tzaddik would say, then please take me now. Because what does he want to sit in this world for, right? Meaning, saying it's a perspective that's hard for us to sort of wrap our heads around because we love going to Bagel Boss. We love to go we like to eat and enjoy this world. So for us, it feels like Hashem's making us lose something. So I'm saying just to have the right perspective. And you'll see the continuation of the Gemara is very obviously saying that type of an idea. So Amrlai, he said, I don't understand. You're telling me the pasuk says Yesh Nisba B'lei Mishpat, that you could die without judgment. Amrlai B'Haksiv Dor Hoylech V'Dor Ba. A generation comes and goes, meaning each generation has its prescribed amount of time, meaning each generation of a person. So how can you just end someone's life early and not give him the full time he needs to be able to do whatever it is he needs to do in the world? Amr, says, no. Dar'ina luhu ana. I hold on to the guy, or to this, in this case, the girl. Ad malula ledara, until the years that they would have lived finish. Now, what am I doing with that person during that time? V'hadar mashlimna leduma, and only once the years pass, then I send them to Duma. Who's Duma? Rashi explains Duma is the name of the person who was like the Shemer HaMesim. He was like the angel of death, or whatever that means exactly. Ayin and whatever sefer you like reading about these types of things. Duma is the guy who was memuna on watching over these people. Amr he says, okay, 1 second. Sof shnia my avdis. So fine, you figured out a way to deal with the problem, but this person lost out on the years and the opportunity to do what they needed to do in this world. He says, no, the way I solve that problem is if I'll find a young Talmud Chacham, a person who's Maver B'milei, Rashi says Maver al Midaisa, meaning he tends to not be makbid on things, he tends to let things go. He has a very comfortable way about him. And meaning, what do you do? I take this is the understanding, the way I understand it, is in Moisifna Lahu lay, and I let that Survim Rabbanon live longer for those years that the Havya Chilufe, but those years he's living are not his. He's living on that person who I've taken early's behalf. So the whole, I said before, you snap. This is the Gemara's version of snapping your fingers and giving this. So basically, this person who was in the world was taken early, let's say 10 years before their time, and so now the schusim that they might have accrued during those 10 years, they lose, right? So the chesed, or the midah keneged midah, is I'm going to find someone else, a tzaddik, obviously a tzaddik who's comfortable, he's not makbid. Because think about it, he's going to live 10 years, he's going to do all these mitzvahs, he's going to get to Shemayim, he's going to say, where's my schar in those 10 years that I lived? And he's going to say, you don't get anything for that. You just lived that for her.
Let's say he became a Russian.
It doesn't matter.
He's saying,
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
he's saying Sachar Zavulun. He's not getting this.
It's like there's a concept in halacha called Zachin lo la'adam shelo b'fanav. You can give someone something that he would want, but you can't force someone to take something they don't want. I would assume here this is a good deal for the person taken early, because if they would have been living in the world, it could have gone either way. Here we're finding a big tzaddik who's going to live well, but even if he goes off the derech, that's not going to spell too. That's not going to go back to him.
They say this at like funerals of young people.
They say an idea that we saw earlier that Hashem sometimes, we'll see a little later also to discuss. They say a similar idea that it's a very hard thing to say to someone.
So if he goes off the derech, he doesn't get.
I don't know that. I'm not going to sit here and say 100%, but yeah,
His young girl's very, very sick.
It doesn't say.
Very sick.
Really?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Very, very sick. Like, very, very sick.
What's her name? Do you know her name?
Eva Shlomit Barilan Esther.
Should be a schus refuah shlema for Ayla. Ava Shlomit
Bat Ilan Esther.
Bat Ilana Esther.
Oh, yeah. One of the sons.
Yep.
Which reminds me also, my wife sent me a name of someone who's also sick. I just want to quickly say,
Yeah.
So also be refuah shleima for Dov Mordechai ben Bela Sheva.
I mean,
Okay.
It doesn't say explicitly that his mitzvahs go to her.
Yeah, no. Chilufah just it's
Does some of the Rishonim say that, or is that your thought?
that's my thought. Yeah, not 100%. I just want to say something that I think is.
But Billy's mom too, SDET, and bought gifts of sour.
Amen. Her neshama should have. Not neshama. She should be closer to it for sure. Okay, so I want to tell a quick thing. I found this fascinating. There's a Tosfos here. The last Tosfos on Daf Daled Amud Beis says in this story, the Malach HaMavis was hanging out with this Amira. The Mesaper Mashira like fire. He was telling him that they were kibitzing, sitting and schmoozing. Tosfos says the Hay Uvda de Miriam Megadla Neshaya. This story with this Miriam Megadla Neshaya, the hairdresser, the bias Sheni Haya. It was during the second bias. The Haisa Imay Shel Pliny. She was the mother of Pliny. Who's Pliny? Pliny is a name we use when we don't. Could be that's Chayni. That's Chayni.
Jesus.
Yeah, Pliny here means Jesus.
oh, it does?
Pashtus. If you look in the Gemara and Shabbos,
Yeah,
He's assuming that it's Mary Magdalene.
Although
that's not Jesus' mother. So it's
the story's not 100%.
Yeah.
But if you read the words, what does it say? It's Miriam Megadla, which sounds like Miriam Magdalene.
Wow.
And I was tining, and it could be. This is my Hosafa.
Yeah.
What you just said, and a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
Miriam Megadla Seyar, Sin Yud Ayin Reish, is like Har Seir. That's Esav, right? That's it. Meaning Miriam Megadla Seyar, she's the one who raised Seyar.
She survived.
The other interesting
She's
thing
the one
is
that was not taken. The other one was taken, right?
Well, there are two Megadlins.
yeah,
She
was the one who was left alone. I just want to tell you the Gemara in who was this Miriam Megadla Seir. There's one other place that it shows up. Is a Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara in Gittin says, I mean, I know we have to do. I cannot read the Gemara. It's unbelievable. The Gemara says like this. Rav Meir. Here it is. Tanya. Rav Meir would say, some people have with food is similar to the way they are with their wives. Meaning what? Some people, a fly falls into his cup, v'zorko, so he throws the cup out and he doesn't drink it. V'zuhi midas Papus ben Yehuda. This is the same midah as Papus ben Yehuda. We'll see who he was in a second. Shahaya noyel bifnei ishta. What he would do is he would always be nervous that his wife was going to go do things that are inappropriate. So therefore, he would lock the door when he would leave the house so she wouldn't go out. V'yotze, and he would leave.
Like a chastity belt.
Something like that. There are some people, the fly falls in his cup. V'zarko, he takes the fly out. V'shosa, when he drinks. V'zuhi midas kol adam. This is like most people. Most people wouldn't be so disgusted. Well, I think nowadays it could be not, but he says those people would allow his wife to talk to normal people that she talks to, but maybe not go out in the street. Yeah. He says there are some people who the fly falls into a dish. He takes the fly, crushes it, and eats it. Zuhi midas adam ra. This is a midas adam ra. Sharoya es ishtay yoitza v'roisha parua. You see, he the way he does it, he sends his wife out and sends her out like dressed all whatever to show off. Mishnei tzadeh v'rochetzes b'nei adam, and she does these terrible things. Whatever. The Gemara goes on to say there's three different types. Who is this person here? Yehuda. Yeah. Midas Papus ben Yehuda. So Rashi says Papus ben Yehuda. Ba'ala shel Miriam Megadla Neshaya. This was the husband of Miriam Megadla Neshaya. So Papus ben Yehuda treated his wife with such a level of distrust that he would keep her in the house, locked her in, because he didn't trust her to be out in the world. Which, by the way, that is their entire Avodas Hashem. The entire Avodas Hashem of Christianity, the highest madrega of their priest is having no connection to the physical world. Meaning, the Yiddish Mahalach is we live in the world. We make a bracha shahakol niyeh b'dvaro, and we're makdish the chulin. Their whole world is their biggest gadol is someone he doesn't have children, doesn't get married. What's the English word for it? Celibate. From the famous joke, they went down into the bottom of into the crypts of the Pope. They're going down to find that the young guy, he's trying to look through the old books to learn up all the sugyas of celibacy, and he comes out and he slaps his head and it says celebrate, not celibate. And that was the end of that. And yeah, but either way, so the point is, you see, so what do you see? So you see Mary Magdalene. Again, if you connect the dots here, this Mary Magdalene, this is the same woman who's the Megad L'Seir, where did that entire Mahalach come from? It came from a husband who didn't treat his wife with the proper amount of covenant and respect. And
He
didn't
locked her up.
He locked her up, left her in the house. That's not the way. That's not the way you do it. And that's what comes out from him. If you would have asked me which one of these three would have led to that person, I would have said maybe it was the third one.
Right,
Going out
correct.
preachers. Adarabba. She was the one who she was such a tzanua that the only way she was able to have a baby, so to speak, was through this immaculate conception. Because their whole entire concept is they cannot imagine that a woman would engage in that physical act. Because that in and of itself, it's like no different than like a horse. It's like we don't look at that. We look at the holiest thing a person can do is with your wife. They look at that as a disgusting thing. I just wanted to, to me, I couldn't leave the Gemara without. But anyway, let's continue. Gemara says,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, okay. So Gemara says like this. We're going to take a deep breath and we're going to, let's go. Rabbi Yochanan kimot l'haikra, he got to the following pasuk. V'tisiseni boy levala echina pasuk as an Eov that Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't want to test Eov. The Satan, the Malach HaMavis, wanted to test Eov, saying because Hashem was praising Eov how great he was, and the Malach HaMavis came, or the Yitzhar came to him. He said, he's not so good. You got to test him a little bit. And then he eventually did, and Eov eventually stood up to the test. But Hashem complained and said, boy, that the Yitzhar was able to convince me for no reason to put him through all of this suffering. Eved sherabai misisin loivenisis, a servant whose master just wantonly tests him just to test him. Does he ever have a shot at succeeding in life? Meaning, this is why he cried. The Rabbi Yochanan kimot l'haikra bachi, and again, I just want to point out. Remember who Rabbi Yochanan is. Rabbi Yochanan is someone who went around after losing all of his kids. 10 children. He used to walk around with either the tooth or the bone of one of his remaining kids, a chicken, whatever. There's different opinions. But the point is, this was the same person who he didn't cry there, right? But here he's bachi. Here he's going around and crying over the unbelievable, just the people that were the. It's hard to even wrap our heads around. Rabbi Yochanan kimot l'haikra bachi. Hein b'kedoshav loyamin also paskin Eov. The kedoshav and his holy ones he didn't trust, meaning he tested him. He didn't want to just leave him alone. Meaning if a person, if Hashem's not going to trust his holy tzaddikim, the b'man yamin, then who can he trust? The rest of us, what do we have? One day, Rabbi Yochanan was going on the way. Chazialu Gavri saw a certain person to have a menokit ta'eni, he was sort of picking figs. Shavik hanach demato, and he would leave the ones that were ripe. V'shakel, and take hanach dolemat, he would take the unripe ones. This sounds a little bit like the Gemara above with someone. We'll see in a second. I'm like, lav honey mali tvei. He said, "What are you picking the ones that are not ripe and leaving the good ones? You're picking the wrong ones." He says, "I'm taking a long trip right now. If I'm taking a long trip, honey natron, honey loy natron. The ones that are ripe are going to go bad. The ones that are not ripe are going to last."
It's like my wife. It says, "Go buy green bananas."
Yeah. So that's what it is. So what's the long trip Rabbi Yochanan's going on? What we're talking about here is we're going to live in this world a long time, right? And it says that eventually something's going to happen, right? That a person is doing well, he's a tzaddik, he's ripe, but we don't want him to go bad. So sometimes Hashem will come and take that person early, and this is sort of a little bit what you were saying before about do we say at a levaya when someone's taken early. Right. Sometimes it's because they've lived a life of tzidkus, and then maybe Hashem, to protect them, wants to take them from this world before they do anything that maybe will ruin.
Wow.
Yep.
We say it about Chanoch.
Yes, they say and with him specifically, they say he turned into a malach. Yeah. Amar Hainu Dichsiv, like it says in the pasuk, Hainu B'Kedoshav Lo Yamin, that he takes them early in order to prevent them. Meaning that if you die early in this scenario, it'll be one of these scenarios. Meaning to say that if someone were to die early, one wouldn't be able to conclude that he died from chatayim, because maybe he died early as a tzaddik and Hashem was doing it to protect, right? So the Gemara asks, Aini, is that really so? There was a certain Talmud that lived in the neighborhood of Rebbe Alexandria, and he died young. And he said, meaning to say that had he lived well, had he been a big tzaddik, he would have lived longer. Meaning to say that the reason why he died was because he did chatayim. And if it's true, like you're saying, that Hashem sometimes takes a tzaddik early in order to prevent the future chatayim, maybe say Dilma Mehen Mekdoshav Lo. Maybe he's one of these that we say that on. He says, no, he says, no. The reason why Rabbi Alexandri knew that this person did something bad was because it was very obvious the way he behaved. He would talk disparagingly about his rebbeim, or maybe literally he would kick his rebbeim. Whatever it is, the point is that person's different, whereas it could be very well be for other young people who are taken that they're dying. It could be that they didn't do any averas and it's only Hashem protecting them for the future.
Since he also didn't stand up fight for his rabbi.
Yeah, it's a mitbayit, but yeah. Rabbi Yochanan kimata lahaykrah bachi. Rabbi Yochanan, again, a lot of Rabbi Yochanans over here, right? The kirafti aleichem lemishpat.
The same Rabbi Yochanan?
Same Rabbi Yochanan, yeah. Rabbi Yochanan kimata lahaykrah bachi. When he got to the following pasuk, the kirafti aleichem lemishpat. Hashem says that I've become close to them in din, in judgment. Vahisi aid, and I'm a witness. Mimaher b'machshefim, and I'm quick with those who are machshefim. Machshefim is sorcery, yeah. Ubemenafim and gilei arayis. And people who take shvuas in God's name that are not true. And also a person who delays paying his workers. A slave, a servant whose master runs to put him in judgment, and not only that, but actually acts as the witness against him. Does he have a shot? He has no chance. So therefore he cried. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Oy lonu sheshakal aleinu akasu kalus kachamuros. How terrible when you read this pasuk, you see that this is what Hashem does to us, both with machshefim and menafim and nishboim l'sheker, which are very serious averas, and oishkei sachar sacher. You got to pay your employees, but it's certainly not on the madrega of the gilei arayis, and yet Hashem does this same behavior with us, regardless. So therefore, kalos kechamuris. Amr Shlakish called hamate din shoger, kilu mate din shamala, a person who distorts the din of a ger, of a convert. Is ki'ilu mata dina shalmala. It's like he distorts the din of Hashem, whatever that means. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, umate ger, right? It's umate ger, and the Hashem push the ger. It's hard to. What does the English say? Mate ger.
It says, and those who pervert the judgment of the proselyte.
Yeah, mate ger. Okay.
The word is expounded as if it is written, and one who perverts me.
Yeah. So the nakuda is the question. Umate versus umati.
Right.
Mate ger is on the ger, umati, it's almost as if it's read as if it's talking about Hashem, so therefore it juxtaposes the two together. A person who does a terrible thing, however, he has charot, he does tshuva. The second he does tshuva, Hashem forgives him immediately. Shenemar, like it says in the same pasuk, v'lo yir'uni, the pasuk continues and it says, and it's because they didn't fear me. Ha yir'uni, if they did fear him, Moichlin lahemiyad, they do it, they'd get forgiven right away. Rabbi Yochanan kimat la'ikra bachi, when he got to the following pasuk, he would cry. He has kol ma'aseh halikim yavi b'mishpat al kol ne'elam. All of the actions of Hashem yavi b'mishpat al kol ne'elam will be brought to judgment on all that's hidden. Eved sherabo shokelo shkogus kizdonos, an eved that his rebbe, that his master treats his accidents and the things he does intentionally the same. Takana yeshlo, does he have a chance? Meaning to say over here it says al kol ne'elam, meaning I didn't even know I did anything wrong, and you're going to treat me just the same as if I knew what I did. That's not fair, right? My al kol ne'elam. What do we understand this to mean? Al kol ne'elam. It could have just say al ne'elam. Al kol ne'elam. Amarav zeha horeg kina b'fnei chaveri v'nimos ba. This is like someone who kills a bug in front of his friend, and he makes him, covered up brias, like you smush the bug in front of him just to make him feel. Yeah, it's a terrible thing to do to a person. But this is al kol ne'elam, meaning to say that it's not something that one really would think about too much. It's like something that you're not aware of as it being such a big deal. It's like a person who spits in front of someone else and makes him feel disgusted. Well, the pasuk continues, the pasuk says that if you do it, whether it's done for the good or for the bad, meaning to say that Hashem is going to come in judgment on you, whether you did things good or bad. Ra, I understand. What do you mean good? When you do good things, Hashem's going to come. It seems like you're going to be judged badly. So Amri Debei Rabbi Yanai, we're going to put Im Tov Imra not as two separate things, but we're going to read it together. That one action can contain within it both good and bad. Amri Debei Rabbi Yanai is a Hanois and Stakal La'ani Befarhesi. It's like a person who gives money to an ani, but he does it publicly. So on the one hand, he's doing a good thing by giving him stuck. On the other hand, he's embarrassing him by letting everyone know that this guy is a pauper. Right? Kihad Rabbi Yanai Chazia Lahu Gaber, like Rabbi Yanai, he saw a certain person, the Kayov Zuzal La'ani Befarhesi, that he was doing exactly that. Amrlei, he said to him, Mutav de lo yaftale, better that you shouldn't give it to him. Mehashta de yaftale v'kasavte versus giving it to him now and you've embarrassed him. Right, because we know an ani is chash of kameis, right? But also, what else is chash of kameis? The person who's mevayiv someone rabbim is chayiv as if he killed him. So it would have been better not to have done that. I know what would have been better is to do it privately. But if you're going to pick something, better not to do it publicly. The Be'er of Shila Amri Zehanois and Stakal Isha B'Seis. He says, no, I have a different shot as to what it means, good and bad together. What does it mean? It means you gave stock to a woman, but you gave it to her privately. Meaning what? B'yichud. The Kamaisi Lolo De Chajda. People are going to think she's a Zaina now because what are you meeting with her in Chadre Chadar? Rav Amr Zeh Mishager L'Ishtei Basar Shein and Mechutach Ba'arish Abbas. Rav says it's like sending your wife the meat from the butcher, but the butcher hadn't taken out the Gid HaNosha, hadn't taken out all of the problems with the animal, and therefore it's Erev Shabbos, and what's going to happen is she's going to be too rushed, and maybe she's not going to have time to take it all out, and you're going to end up serving treif to people, or not treif, but you're going to be serving them parts of the animal you're not allowed to eat. So meaning that's good and bad. You're doing a chashuva thing by sending the meat, but you're doing a bad thing by sending the meat that's going to end up being a problem. For the Gemara, Rava said this. How Rava Mishaga. Rava used to send his wife this meat. We know who Rava was. Who was Rava's father-in-law? Shani Bas Rav Chizda. He married Rav Chizda's daughter, right? Remember we saw in the Gemara earlier in Moed Katan, that towards the end of Moed Katan, Rav Chizda, right? Rava davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should get three things. He said, I want to be a chacham like, I forget, it was Rav Huna. I want to be rich like Rav Chizda, my father-in-law. And I want to have, what was the third thing? He said, the third thing he didn't get. I guess you don't remember that. Yeah, either way. Rav Chizda was a wealthy man, right? So Shani Bas Rav Chizda, the Kimle Begaba the Bkia, not only was Rav Chizda big Talmud, his Talmud Chacham and Tzaddik, his daughter was a big Tzaddikus, and she knew, maybe even a Talmud Chacham, Talmidah Chachama, she knew how to take out the Gid, and she knew how to do Nikur and all the different things. You imagine nowadays we don't even do that. Even the Rabbanim in America don't do that. The women, Rav's wife has already taken these things out. Either way, he had no problem with it. She knew how to exactly take care of it. No big deal. He got to the following pasuk. He cried, when it comes out that Klal Yisrael have these terrible sufferings happening to them, when they are found upon them. Also, Ros Rabos, these terrible evil things, Vitzaros, and these sufferings, which we'll see Vitzaros very soon in Yavamas. Yeah, Eved Shirabe Mamtilei Ros Vitzaros, a servant that his master brings upon him these terrible things. Takani Yeshlo, does he have a chance? Now, my Ros Vitzaros, the Gemara says, Amarav, Ros Shenasas Tzaros Zulazu, meaning the reading is bad things, and those bad things themselves have no way to get out of it, because the things he brings you, the solution for one is a problem for the other. He gives an example. Kigoin Zibura V'akrava, like a bee or a hornet, and a scorpion, meaning the proper way to heal a bee sting or a hornet sting is through a cold compress. But by doing the same thing, you would be exacerbating the sting of a scorpion. I don't know if this is medically true or not, but the point is that the healing of one, the refuah of one, is going to exacerbate the other one. So you sort of have no way out. That's what it means, Rabbas Tzaros. So just say very quickly, what exactly is the problem here? I mean, that's what it means. I mean, Hashem's going to sometimes bring things upon us. This is not something that really is a yotzim in a cloud that all of a sudden he's going to cry. I mean, Hashem sometimes brings these. So they say over here, a little bit there, the emphasis is on the kisim te'ena. If a person, when he's experiencing suffering, it feels to him like it's a mitzvah, meaning to say, like it's happenstance. Like oh, look what I found, right? If the things are coming upon him and he doesn't connect what's happening to him as coming directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, intentionally for some purpose, in order to help him do tshuva, whatever it is, that's when a person has no chance. A person has no chance of ever correcting his ways if every time something bad happens to him, he complains and he doesn't acknowledge. So maybe this is Hashem trying to send him a slight message. In fact, I've heard this many times, or my friend used to say this all the time in Israel, that he has a book, I think it's called Listen to Your Messages, where it means Hashem sometimes knocks. And if you don't answer the door, he knocks harder. And if he knocks, he answer the door. If you're not going to answer the door, it's going to get worse and worse and worse until it gets to the point where you're like, oh, I really should have started brushing my teeth 40 years ago. My teeth are all falling out now, right? You have to get out in front of these things. Otherwise, either way, things are
Also, usually when you have rows, you do something about them. You try to fix them. But if you have two rows, and whichever one you try to fix,
you're stuck.
The other one is worse. It happened with COVID. Like we try to lockdowns and masks, and people get depressed and suicidal. Right. And
you do nothing, and then people get sick. Yeah, 100%. Right. Okay, Shmuel Amar, he says no. What's the case? Very interesting. This is talking about a person gives an ani. He's really, really desperate for money. So what does he do? He goes to the loan shark. He says, I need money. I need it desperate. He says, it's a big Vic. I charge 40% interest every 3 months. You think you can handle it? He says, yeah, but they're going to take my house if I don't do this. He says, okay, here's the money. And all of a sudden, he thinks he got out of it. And all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, guess what? The loan shark's coming around with a baseball bat, and he's saying, hey, not only that, do I take your house? I'm getting your house, and I take your business, right? So he says, you did him a good solid, but really, the good that you did really wasn't so good. The Ra'os has tzaros in it also, meaning you fix this problem, and you gave him a bigger problem. It's like people say, Zuza la'alala, money for food he doesn't have. However, litlisa shchiach, for hanging he has. And the Rebbeinu Chananel says it means when you hang him, when you turn him over and hold him by his feet and you shake out that you can find the money. Meaning he's exchanging a normal balchov for a really not such a good balchov. Either way, continues the Gemara. That Hashem will become angry on that day. Ve'azavtim, and I will leave them. The starti ponamehem, and I will hide my face from them. Any Jew who does not have his prayers unanswered, meaning it is the way of the Jewish people Hashem wants our prayers, so he doesn't answer them on purpose, meaning Hashem wants to act with us at times in Hester Panim, in a little bit of a distant manner, because that is the nature of our relationship with him. If our nature of our relationship with him was every time we turned to him, we got what we wanted, at a certain point, we'd be like, I could do no wrong. So you'd have like the rich kid going around town, like knowing that he can't get in trouble. All of a sudden, he's going to start acting like an animal.
Like
But
a
it-
genie.
Yeah, exactly. If I had a genie every 2 seconds, eventually it would be, what type of relationship is that? Kol she'eino b'hester panim, eino mehem. This is not the midas Yisrael. Kol she'eino b'vahaya le'echol, a person who doesn't have the goyim, the government taking from him, meaning it's the nature of the Jews. Every community we've lived in for the last 2,000 years, the government comes and steals the rabbi to get all the rich Jews to give the money. Eino mehem. Amar le Rabbana le Rava. The rabbi said to Rava, Mar loy b'hester panim. He said, but you never had to pay money to the government. You never had stuff taken from you. He says, what are you talking about? He say, not only that, Hashem always answered your tefillas. He say, and you never had the government take anything from you. He says, meaning he didn't respond to the first thing. He's like, you're right. Whenever I talk to Hashem, Hashem answers my tefillas, which is not true. We saw from the Gemara earlier that only 2 of the things he died before he got, not the third thing. Okay, you have to think about that for a second. But either way, the second thing, saying, hey, Rava, you never have to pay anything to government. They never come and tax you extra. He says, you don't have a clue how much I've had to bribe the government to keep our community safe. He says, but the rabbis still would look at me with suspicious eyes, and that already created a din that the rabbis looked on him, and sure enough, what happened? The tax collectors came around and said, hey, by the way, we know you pay taxes, but we think you have to owe a little bit more. We just raised your property taxes $8,000. If you don't give it to us, we're going to take away your house. Right? Like it says in the Bryce, anytime the Chachamim put their eyes, meaning to say they looked on something with any type of level of din, it's oy misa, oy oyni, it creates a problem because the rabbi is a very big, powerful thing that when they look on someone, it either is going to create death or porn or losing money. What does it mean by yoim hahu? That even though Hashem afalpi shehistarti panamahem, that I'm going to keep my hashgacha from them. Bechalom adaberbo, but I will still speak to them in a chalom. Meaning to say, b'yoim, it says in the pasuk during by the day, but at night when you're sleeping, Hashem's still going to give us that extra hashgacha. Rav Yosef Amar Yodoy Netuya Aleinu. Not only that, he says that even though there's a hastaras upon him, that Hashem isn't giving us, let's say, the hashgacha that we would want to have, the direct connection that way. Yodoy Netuya Aleinu, he's still always protecting us. His hand is always over us. Now, normally Yodoy Netuya Aleinu is a negative thing. In the psukim, Yodoy Netuya Aleinu usually means Hashem is punishing us. But here, it's almost as if to say that the way Hashem shows us that He's still protecting us is by punishing us. Meaning, what's the worst thing a kid could experience is his father saying, "I don't care what you do." I'd much rather get a patch than, who cares? Do what you
It's a
want.
song, right? If you love me, that's the road.
That's an old, yeah. So, Amar Yadin Netu Yalein. I mean, how do we know that Hashem loves us? Because He punishes us, and that's how a child knows. That's why you have to discipline your kids appropriately. But
Well, the Rashi says the hug and all of
yeah. I mean, the Pashup Shad reading the Gemara. I'm saying, Shenamar, how do I know that? Ubekzel Yodi Kisisicha, and in the shadow of my hand are they covered? Fine.
That's the song he sings in Schlissel. Right,
That's where it's from.
Yeah, right in the band, remember?
Yeah, nice song. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya had a koibe case. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya was by the Caesar. Achvi lehahu apikorsa. There was a certain apikoros who didn't believe in Hashem or didn't believe in Hashgacha. And Achvile, he sort of like was hinting at him. He was like pantomiming in a certain type of way. Amad adrinu moral ape mine.
My text, which is uncensored, is Hahu Mina.
Yeah, they changed it. Yeah. Mina, yeah. Min, what is it? May Talmide Yeshu Hanoitzri. They say that's that whenever these censors took out certain words, then they changed it. They did it to like protect like the reputation of the Christians. So whenever the word min was there, min they knew meant basically.
That's why on Aleno you took that out, right?
A lot of that stuff was taken out. So here it says Apikoros, you're right, it says it's a min. Either way, he says, what was he doing here? He was like pantomiming in some sort of a remiza, derech remiza. He was implying to Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya in front of the Caesar. The Caesar had no clue what was going on over here. He was like implying to Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya that you are from the nation Amma the Adrinu Mar La'ape Mine, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to forsake, that is no longer interested in. Achvile, and he said back to him, or he hinted back to him, maybe like with his hand, maybe, I don't know, he did something with his hand. Yadei Netu Yaleinu, no. Hashem is still watching over us. They were going back and forth like this. Amrle Kaisler Bishur, the Kaisler, the Caesar was watching this entire conversation over here, or whatever you want to call it, this interaction between them. My achvile, what did he, meaning this Apikaris, what was he hinting at you? Meaning, how did you interpret what he did? He said, no, I understood what he was telling me was exactly what we read, that he was telling me that the Jewish nation had been forsaken. And I was responding with my own version of a hint by saying, no, we are still under Hashem's protection. Amru le lehahu mina. Then they said to the min who was doing this, and here they didn't take out min. I don't know why this gear so changed.
They're careless.
Careless, yeah.
The censors were careless. They didn't catch everyone.
My achvislay. Okay, so what were you hinting to him? Meaning, Rabbi Yeshua clearly understood what you were doing. What were you sending to him? He says he confirmed. Amad hadrinu mari mineh. He's saying the same exact thing, that I was letting him know that the Jewish people have been forsaken by God. Umay achvilach. And what did he respond to you? Meaning, did you understand his response to you? He says, Lo yadana, no clue, didn't understand. He said, okay, so my Jewish and my religious Jew and my non-religious Jew that are my two chashuva people that are hanging out in my court. So the Jew, the religious Jew, he understands. He knows how to understand one idea between something else. And this shmagagi over here doesn't understand what's going on. Amru gaver de lo yadamai machvile b'mechayig, a person who's talking in secret and he can't understand the secret code that's being discussed. Yachvi kamei malka will do this in front of the king. He says, "Afku v'katlu, they killed him." Ki kanicha nafsh Bishur ben Chananya. When Bishur ben Chananya was on his deathbed, Amrulei Rabbanan, the Rabbanan said to him, "What are we going to do without you? Now that you're dying, we're not going to have your special power that you have the ability to sort of take care of these apikarsim. What are we going to do?" He says, "Amrulei, what do you mean?" The pasuk says, "Of the eitzim ibanim, when the eitz is taken away from the children, nisracha chachmasam, meaning when I'm gone, don't worry, the guy won't be able to make these arguments anymore." Meaning Hashem, this is a similar idea to that every generation, if we could have had the Vilna Gaon, if we could have had Rabbi Kiva Eger, every generation has the Gedolim that Hashem wants them to have. We might not have been able to handle having a Vilna Gaon. Vilna Gaon may not have been, but we have our Gedolim, same thing over here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how he explains it. The E boy is saying a different way, different pasuk where that idea comes from. The pasuk says, "Vayomer." I think Vayomer Nisav and Elka. This is when Esau was speaking to Yaakov. Let's go together. He wanted to travel together with him. Nisav and Elka of Elka Lenegdecha. And the pasuk can continue there. That Yaakov very quietly was sort of hinting at him. No, you go your way, I'll go my way. Meaning they were talking to each other in that way. Reb Ila Havisalek B'Darga de Rabba Bar Shila. He was going up the stairs of the house of Rabbi Bar Shila, who was a teacher. Shamel Yanuka, and one of his students, a little boy, was sitting there. The Havikakari was reading from the following pasuk: Hine Yotzer Harim, the one who created the mountains, Ubayre Ruach, and created wind. Magid La'odam Asichai will ultimately talk to a person about all the speech that he had. Meaning, ultimately, Hashem is we're going to stand in dinner in front of Hashem on every word we've ever spoken. Scary a little bit, yeah. Omar Evich Rabbi Magid Lo Masichai. The Hashem's going to come to tell us every word. It's going to be like the movie Defending Your Life. You're going to literally watch a movie, and every word Hashem's going to play in front of you and be like, what were you thinking when you said this? What were you thinking when you said that? Right? Yeah. So he says a master who's going to take his servant in front of him and nail him on every single word. Takana Yeshla, he has a chance. My Masichai asked Gemara, what does it mean Masichai? Amrav Afilu Sichi Yiserish Minishlish. They were talking even about the talk between a husband and pillow talk. Not just the pillow talk after talk, the pillow talk before pillow talk, yeah? The pillow, Magidim loy, Mishas Misa. And it's interesting, it's not that they say it to him when he gets to Shemaim. Bishas Misa, as he's dying, those are the things that they're going to ask him about. Very interesting. Aini, is that really true? That it's such that you're not allowed to talk to your wife in those times when you're about to have Tashmish? You're not supposed to speak Divrei Ritzoi to try to encourage the interaction to be more pleasurable for her and for you? That's usher? Who says that's usher? 80, is that really true? Don't ask me what Rav Kahana is doing under the bed. He was trying to learn from his rabbi, but he was under his rabbi's bed when his rabbi was Friday night, let's say, with his wife.
We learned this somewhere else.
Yeah, it's my brother.
He was hiding to find
He was
out.
hiding. He said, it's one thing for me to sit in base medicine here from you, but I want to know how to act. And if I know how to act, I'm going to go all the way to the ends of the earth to figure that out. Yeah. He heard the whole Maisa. He heard the Divrei Ritzui. He heard the Maisa itself. He heard the pillow talk afterwards. From the way you were talking before this Maisa, it sounds like you've never done this thing before. You were talking with such slavos for this whole thing. It's like a person talking about a steak. You never had a steak. Yeah. Amarle Kahana Pike. He says, Kahana, get out of my house. What do you? Lav Oyrechara. It's not disrespectful for you to be here. He says, what's the question? The question you see over here is, what was Rav saying to him? You see, Rav was Rav was telling him, get out of my house, you crazy person. You're hanging out on my bed, right? But the point is, Rav was doing these things, and Rav was justifying it. Rav wasn't saying, "Oh, you're right, I should have done it." Rav was saying, "No, that's what you're supposed to do when you're in that. And when you're in the bedroom, that's exactly where the talk's supposed to be.
Right.
If you're doing it walking down the street, you're doing it in gotta get a bagel. I can understand why that's a problem. If you're doing it in your bedroom, it's exactly what you're supposed to be talking like
The
that.
other sugi says Torah
Torah have a limit on the Torah. Yeah.
It's not so bad.
Not so bad.
Yeah.
Either. So he says, like, so what's the question is, you said 2 seconds ago you're not supposed to speak about these things, and Hashem's you're going to stand in judgment over it. And now we're saying that Rav did it, and Rav had no problem with it. So which one is it? And we know this famous thing, Rav never uttered one word extra the Gemara talks about. Either way, loy kasha. Meaning it's talking about where if the both of you are very interested in doing that act, and you're married and it's a mitzvah to do it, then you don't need to be discussing it extra because you're both interested in doing it. But if, let's say, someone's not in the mood, everyone has to be in the mood. If you're not in the mood, it's mamash osir. So you have to make sure that everyone wants to do it. Otherwise, it's a problem. So therefore, that's the difference. So Rav obviously was talking because his wife maybe wasn't so much in the mood. Got her in the mood, everything was fine. But if she's already in the mood, there's no reason to have to do those things. Fine. It's pasuk says that if they don't hear my words, Hashem says if they don't listen to the mitzvahs, in mistarim, in a private place, my nefesh, Hashem says, cries because of pride. What does that mean? Hakadosh Baruch Hu has a place. Umistarim Shmo, and the name of this place, this hidden place, is called hidden. It's called Mistarim. My mipnei geva. What does it mean that he goes there to cry because of the pride? Be the loss of the pride, the loss of that pride. What is that referring to? Amr Shmuel Bar Yitzchak mipnei ga'avosan shel Yisrael shenitlo mehav nitlo of dikachavim, that upon the loss of the Beis Hamikdash, when they do Averis and Hashem takes the Shekhinah away from them, the pride of the Jews is lost. That was also lost. I mean, I know Kalman is very upset when he sees rabbis crying, but now it's saying Hashem cries. This is already a whole nother level, right? Is it really true that Hashem cries? You only cry when you're sad. Hashem's not sad. How do I know that Hashem's not sad? The pasuk says that Hashem has. Now, I read it v'chedva, meaning happiness, but it could be like you. Maybe it means Oz bimkomo. He has strength. A person only cries maybe when he's weak. And here the Gemara is saying, I have a pasuk that implies he's strong. So obviously, if someone's stronger, they're not going to give into that need to be a little girl, right? That's I think the way you would say it, right? Loi kashi says not shver. Why? Pasuk says the steer in the psukim is not shver because it's habib bebati gavi v'habibati broi. So there's different mishonim here. It means basically like there's an inner chamber, an outer chamber. The question is which one's he crying in? So that's the machlekes rishonim. I think Rashi says he's crying on the inner chamber, and in the outer chamber he's not.
Which is mashma from the umistarim.
Yes, mistarim. He cries inside, exactly. Yes, right. Meaning, assuming the hidden place is the inner place. Ubate broi loy. Are you telling me even on the outside one he does not cry? Meaning we're going in the opposite direction now. The haksiv, the pasuk says, I lost this spot. Vayikra Hashem tzvakos b'yom hahu. You see that Hashem does cry. Because everyone cries there, which this kol shekain is a very strange kol shekain. Right. Hashem cries. Right. Why? Because even the malachim cry. Right. A little bit difficult. That there's a bitter crying of the malachim. Fine. A lot of crying over here. There will be certain crying. V'tered eini dima, and my eyes will, bring tears. Ki nishba eder Hashem, because the eder Hashem, the flock of Hashem, meaning Klal Yisrael, have been nishba. They've been taken captive. Amar Abelazar shalosh dimos halalu lama. What do you need to say in this pasuk 3 times? Dima. Achas al mikdash rishon. Have a great day. Achas al mikdash rishon, v'achas al mikdash sheni, v'achas al Yisrael shegolam b'koyma. And one's talking about mikdash rishon. Second one's talking about mikdash by sheni, and the third one's talking about the Yisrael that they became they became exiled from Eretz Yisrael, from Yishlaim. V'igad Amri, the third opinion of what the third Bechia is on, is Achas al Bittul Torah. That's talking about Bittul Torah, meaning it's Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, everyone's masking. But what's the third tier for? The third tier is because of the Elbon Shel Torah, the Bittul Torah that we're not learning. So Bish, Lamanda Amar al Yisrael Shagalu, that it's talking about Klal Yisrael being taken out of Yishlaim, out of Eretz Yisrael. Hain B'Chsevin continues, the pasuk says, Ki Nishba Eider Hashem, that the flock of Hashem have been taken captive because we're no longer in Yerushalayim, we've been taken away. El Lamanda Amar al Bittul Torah. Maiki nishba ider Hashem. How can you tell me that that's called being exiled, or that's called being taken captive? It just means you're not learning Torah. He says, no. Kivin shegolu Yisrael mim kaiman. Since we're no longer in Eretz Yisrael, ein lecha bittul Torah gadol miseh, which is a big knock on pretty much anything happening outside of Eretz Yisrael. It sounds like the limud Torah in Eretz Yisrael is on such a madrega that it's considered bittul Torah to no longer be learning in Eretz Yisrael, even if you're learning a whole day. There's some element of, and obviously it means a bittul Torah ve'echos, because a person could still fill his entire day learning Torah, but on a certain madrega of whether it's in terms of how much Havana he has, or it's in terms of the Kiddusha of his learning Torah outside of Eretz Yisrael, on some madrega is called a bittul Torah, enough that HaKadosh Baruch would cry over it.
We had this a few times where we compared I forgot the word, the strong ones of Eretz Yisrael with the people of
Eretz Yisrael.
So much better.
Yeah.
Although later it wasn't that.
Yeah,
later it will outstrip.
Eventually, yeah. Tana Rabban, Bryce says, Shlosha Kadosh Baruch Hu b'chelim b'chol yom. On three people, Hashem cries every day. Al she'efshar la'asik b'Torah, a person who has the opportunity and the ability to learn Torah, ve'einoi oisek, and he chooses not to come to Daf Yomi Shiur. Ve'al she'efshar la'asik b'Torah, and on the person who doesn't have the ability to learn Torah, ve'oisek, and he does. This is a question. This is all the Choronim, Rishonim, they all discuss. What exactly is so bad about a person who can't learn, who does learn? Adarabah, so some say crying means here's a crying of joy. But okay, that's a little bit of a...
it might be that he paskins when he's not capable of
That's one thing that they say. And another thing they say is it's referring to someone. What does it mean? Meaning he's so busy with his parnasa that instead of giving tzedakah from the one money that he makes, he goes and spends his day learning. Meaning this is a very important idea, meaning we should all be learning Torah. But for a person to be Isaac in Torah in a way that it's going to create a problem because he's either, not showing his family enough attention, or maybe the money that he's making from his parnasa he's not using properly. Different pshatim either way. Val parnes hamisgoy ala tzibur, or on a leader of a community who sort of acts tyrannically, manipulating his community for his own power and his own greed. That's a terrible thing. Rebbe have a nokit Sefer Kinos. Rebbe was once holding a book of Kinos, Eicha probably, the Kakari Begaveh, and he was reading from it. And Kimot Lahai Psuka, he got to the following pasuk. What was the pasuk? Hishlich Mishamayim Eretz, that from Shemayim, the high, to the Eretz, Hishlich, the pasuk says, Klal Yisrael was taken from a high level to a low level. Nafal Min Yadei, ironically or unironically, his Sefer Kinos fell out of his hand, right? Fell to the ground. Amr Mi'igra Ram Labira Mikta, from a high place to a bira mikta, to a very low place. That's how terrible it was that Klal Yisrael would fall. Fine. Meaning he was lamenting, no pun intended, the idea that Klal Yisrael had fallen from such a high level to such a low level. Rebbe v'Rebbe Chia, this story is an unbelievable story. Rebbe v'Rebbe Chia have a shakli, this is the Rebbe Snipeshitz, which is, it's a shame that it's all at the end of the daf, but yeah. Rebbe v'Rebbe Chia have a shakli v'azli ba'orcha. They were once going on a path. They were walking. They were going a place. They were traveling. Masa. They got to a certain city. Amri ikatsuv. They wanted to know, is there a big Talmud Chacham here? Maybe we should go be makabel a rav. Go visit a tzaddik. Nazel v'nikbal ape. Let's go visit him and get a bracha of him. Amri ikatsuv rabbanach. So they told him, yeah, there is a big tzaddik here. However, he's a ma'or einayim. He's blind. We'll get to this in a second. Amr le Rebbe. So Rebbe Chia said to Rebbe, Tiv'at, you sit here. Loi tezalzel b'nesiyuscha. Meaning all of a sudden, when he wasn't blind, it would make sense for the both of them to go. Now they found out that he's blind. Rebbe Chia says to Rebbe, it's not a covet for you to have to go be makabel this blind rabbi, and you stay over here. Ezel ana, I'll go. Ve'akbil apei, and I'll go show him the covet. Takfei, Rebbe said, he grabbed him, ve'ozl behadei, and he went with him. Meaning Rebbe was having none of it. So Rebbe went with him. So they went to speak to him. As they're leaving this Talmud Chacham, this Ma'or Einayim, this blind person, Amr lahu, he said to them, Atem hikbaltem ponim hanirim, you've come to visit someone who is seen, the Einon royan, but cannot see. Tizku, you shall merit lahakbil ponim to lahakbil ponim haroim, the Einonirin, to be zocha, to be mekabel ponim of Hashem, who sees the Einon Nirin and isn't seen. Very interesting bracha. He says, you came to me even though he's blind. So I can't see, but I'm only seen. So you should be zocha, therefore, to have a connection to he who is not seen but is all seeing. Amr lei, he said back to them, Iku hashta. Sorry, this was Rebbe Chia. Rebbe said to Rebbe Chia, Had I stayed and not come to visit this Rav, you would have prevented me from having this great bracha, and that would have been terrible. Amrulay. So finally, they turned to the person, the blind man, the blind Rav, and said, "Miman shmialach, where did you learn that being Makabel a Rav is such a chashuv thing?" Which the whole story is upside down. The whole reason why they went to the city, they're there. Maybe let's go find. They obviously held it of such a thing, and now all of a sudden, so give it a second. So Mefarke, he said, Mipirka the Rabbi Yaakov Shmiele. I learned it from the story of Rabbi Yaakov. The Rabbi Yaakov ish kfar Chitaya. He was from the city of Chitaya. Have the Mekabel Apei the Rabbi Kol Yomi. He would go to his Rebbe's house every single day. Kikosh, and as he got older, and his Rebbe was even older, most probably, his Rebbe told him, Lo nitzdar mar de lo yochel mar. You don't have to come anymore. It's very difficult for you to travel. Amalei, he said to him, no. Mizuter, is it such a small thing? What they say about Chazal, about the rabbi, sorry. That a person is going to live forever, long life, lo yira hashachas, and won't see the pit of bad, of evil. Ki yira chachamim yamusu, when they see a chacham die, meaning when they're around chachamim who've died, or they're around them as they're dying, he's going to have a bracha to have a richas yamim. A person who sees a chacham as he's dying or when he's dead, he'll have life from that. To visit them while they're alive. Wouldn't it be a koshkin? This whole story upside down from top to bottom makes no sense. Two people, Rebbe and Rebbe Chia, they're in a town, they want to go be Makabel Rav. So they want to go, let's go find the Rav. They ask around, turns out the guy's blind. So this person that's blind, now all of a sudden Rebbe Chia says, no, you know what, you sit here. So what were they thinking initially? What were they thinking now that he's blind? Now, okay, so they go visit. Rebbe says, no, I want to go. Okay, so he goes. They visit. And then he gets this bracha. The bracha is the nira ve'ena nira, and you see and not seen, and Hashem who's not seen, all seeing. What exactly is the bracha? And then more importantly, the Kal V'chomer is a little funny. Normally we say, what do we say? What is it? Rishayim b'chayayim kriyim mesim, and tzadikim b'misasan kriyim chayim. That the ultimate chiyus, the ultimate life of a tzaddik is when he dies. So the Kal V'chomer is a little bit not so strong. The Kal V'chomer is if I see them when he's dead, meaning when they're experiencing real life, the life of L'netzach Netzachim and Olam Haba, whatever it is, then I could understand why that I'll have a bracha from. For Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz, in his own way over here, he says a couple of things. So he says, what's the milah of going to visit a tzaddik? Why do we go to visit a tzaddik? So he says, really, there's two reasons. One is, when you go to visit a tzaddik, you want to be nisayr or have inspiration from being around the tzaddik. You see the way he acts, the way he talks. He'll give you a bracha, whatever it is. There's a practical sort of like you want to be around the tzaddik because you'll have a lot of, by looking upon his face, by seeing the way he acts. But he says there's another thing, which is also sort of like the opposite of an ayin hara, right? Or like what we saw earlier, that anyone who the Rabbanim put their eyes on, you can have din. But if that's true for bad things, then obviously it's also true for good things. That if a person goes to a tzaddik and the tzaddik just looks at him, pays attention to him in a good way, the bracha that comes from just being in the eyes of a tzaddik is in and of itself a chashuv thing. So therefore, Rebbe, now, so one sec, what's the difference between the two things? He says like this: a tzaddik looking at someone is a bracha, whether the person who's looking is higher than the person who he's looking at, or he's lower than the person he's looking at, because that's a kayach, that's tzaddikim have. But if the only reason why you're going to be makabel this person is in order to be inspired by him specifically, that's really only going to work if the person you're going to is on a higher madrega than you. But if you yourself are even a bigger tzaddik than him, there's very little practical benefit that you'll get out of going to. What do you mean? Everything he does, I do and more. So he says like this: Kolzman, where they were assuming that the person they were going to visit was a full-fledged normal person who could see, they said to themselves, Rebbe and Reb Chia, let's go find the Talmud Chacham to be makabel. Not so much because we need to learn from them, but at least he'll we'll get the bracha of having him see us. But when they found out that he was blind, they understood. Reb Chia said, there's no reason for you, Rebbe, to go. Me, Reb Chia says, I can go, because maybe he's a bigger Talmud Chacham than me, maybe he's a bigger tzaddik than me, and I'll benefit from it. But there's no way you'll benefit from seeing him. You're a Rebbe, you're a Yehuda Nasi, you're this great Givaldik tzaddik. There's no reason for you to go. Rebbe said, Narishkeit, let's go. Anivas, he was saying, this person I could also benefit from. So they go there, and he gives them the bracha. What's the bracha he gives? He says, you came to visit me despite the fact that I'm a blind person, meaning you came, why? You came because you wanted to, you had anivas, you showed a certain level, or you subjugated yourself to someone who was clearly below you. You should be zoicha. lefi that to be Makabal Hashem. Meaning, and the way he expressed it was, you came to someone who is seen but can't see. You should be Zoicha then to be Makabal Hashem. And then they turned to him and said, who told you this secret? What secret? I mean, the only reason why they were visiting him is because they know that it's a chashuv thing. The secret that he was saying, as Rabbi Yochanan says, is the third reason why you go to visit a tzaddik. Not for the bracha that he's going to give you, not for him looking at you. He says, because visiting a tzaddik is like visiting Hashem. Meaning, when you visit a tzaddik, and meaning what? And ultimately, he's always going to be, even if that tzaddik himself isn't someone I could look up to, but he represents, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the bracha is that you're going to have a similar type of idea, that you're going to end up having the zchus to be Mekabel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we do when we go to the Beis Hamikdash. And then he explains the Kal V'Chemer that way also. Because now the Kal V'Chemer all of a sudden makes sense. He says, what was the whole cheshbon? The cheshbon was, b'misasan, a tzaddik, once he dies, he can't see me. So since he can't see me, there's really less of a reason to go. But during his lifetime, you have both milos. So therefore, there's much bigger Kal V'Chemer from the lifetime versus from the death. So that's the cheshbon that he works out. Also, just very interestingly, the Gemara refers to this blind person as a me'or einayim, which is not really the common term.
It's the Hebrew for Saginar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different than Saginar, right? So there's different lashonis that you find in psukim and gemaras for a blind person. You have an iver, right? Like we say in the Chumash, lifnei iver lo'isitem michshel. In front of a blind person, you shouldn't put a stumbling block. And iver, I was looking this up. So iver comes from the same lashon as ar. This is by the Urias Shlomo. You know who this is? Shlomo Pappenheim. Shlomo Pappenheim wrote. He actually wrote against Rabbi Yochanan Shitzel, which is ironic from the Vart. He was a Rav in Breslov. He was a German Rav. Some people say he was Maskil, but I don't think so. I think he was legit.
They were from Maskilim.
Yes.
Maskilim just meant
educated, academic.
Yeah.
So he wrote a sefer Urias Shlomo on a book on synonyms and basically a dictionary. He also wrote a philosophical treatise on space and time. He's obviously a very intelligent person. He also wrote a sefer called Agodas Arba Koises, which poetry. He lost his wife and his 3 children, one very quickly right after the other. So he wrote a book, poems, basically Torah poems, just reflecting on his entire, a very big genius. And he was explaining this idea of iver comes from lashon ar, skin, ayin vav reish, that just like an iver is blind, the most common form of blindness is cataract. Cataract is really where the skin, there's a developed membrane over the eye. The eyeball itself is fully functioning. It's just that it develops this sort of membrane over it that it makes it impossible to see. So that's why an iver is referred to as an iver because of that. That's one lashon. And therefore he says, based off of that when it says what does it say? It says that hashoiched ya'aver einei pikchem, that lashon of that bribery blinds a person. It doesn't mean it blinds him. It means it's a temporary blindness just for that case because it's external. That's where lashon iver is from skin. It's an external blindness. It says then you find in the Gemara we have a lashon of summa. A summa, which we saw earlier, Rav Yosef was a summa. We saw it earlier. Summa be'enai achas. What does lashon summa come from? So the Gemara in Babasra says that a satan, the Malach HaMavis, the Yetzer Hara are all the same, and the lashon of summa comes from what the Zohar calls the Malach HaMavis, the Yetzer Hara, Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. That's the name of that satan.
They call him Samael.
Samael, yeah. So Samach Mem Aleph Lamed is from that same lashon of summa, of blind, meaning to say. So here, this comes from Reb Mordechai Hakoyen from Tzfat. He was a Talmud of the Maharit, who was the son of the Mabit. They were all buried near the Alshich. You're talking about big Kabbalists over here. And he says the base in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the Gemara says that the Malach HaMavis is full of eyes. And here he's saying, from here it's mashma that the Malach HaMavis is a summa, he's blind. So he puts it together and he says, how can the Malach HaMavis be blind? And at the same time, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says he's full of eyes. So he says when a person does Aveiros and a person does sins, what's he really doing? He's effectively saying, what's the lashon of Gemara? Mir uni adam like it's kilo. He's walking through the world pretending as if no one's watching him. That's how a person does chet. No one's looking. I can do Aveiros now. So it's as if to say this Yetzer Hara that's getting me to do the Aveiros is blind. No one can see. So it's every time he does an Aveira, it's like he gives another eye to this blind. So the Samal is Samael, whatever. He's blind, but he gives him eyes by doing Aveiros. That's the lashon of summa. And then the lashon of the Gemara of saginar. So saginar literally means sagi in Aramaic means enough.
Mm-hmm.
Sagi, it's enough. Nahar means light, meaning he's blind, meaning he has enough light. So most people we've started using the lashon of saginar It's B'lashon Saginar. It's the Aramaic version of the word euphemism. It's a euphemism. He's not a garbage man. He's a sanitation worker, right? He's not blind. He's a Saginar. He's light. He's dimly. His eyes are dimly lit. Like it's like a sort of nice way of speaking about something. Differently abled, right? So Saginar, that's where it comes from. But there's so it's a euphemism for being blind. The Kleokris is a very nice idea by a Saginar. What is the lashon of Saginar? It means it's not a euphemism. It says it actually means that he's Sagi Nahar. He has enough light. What does it mean? He says normally a blind person, since he can't see, all of his other faculties get a lot stronger. So the clarity that he would have in life, which would normally come from his eyes, he doesn't have, but he has enough of it from his other external pieces. But either way, my point is that none of these three things are used in the Gemara to refer to this person. He's referred to as a Ma'orei Naim, which is different than a Saginar. A Ma'orei Naim means not just that he has enough light in his eyes. He's a Ma'orei Naim. His eyes are a light to others, which is what's happening in this Gemara. This Gemara, they came to be Makabel Pnei Tzaddik, and he gave them a bracha that ended up being even bigger, which I think is why he's referred to in this Gemara as a Ma'orei Naim. All right, we'll hold there. There's a little bit more Gemara, but
Go ahead.
close.
Oh, yeah.
This is